is happening, guys? Welcome to FPL Surgery's 8 Simple Rules for a Better Overall Rank series. So the 8 Simple Rules are just rules that we've created. We think they can help any manager improve their rank. This includes ourselves. We wrote rules, we've tinkered with them for a year, we've improved them, we've deleted some, and we've came up with the final 8. So now all we have to do is get awesome managers to come in and tell us what they think of them. My name is Dave. With me, as always, is Rich. And today we have FF Community's Holly with us. Holly, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great. The graphics are working. It's really hot, but I've got a fan on. You can't hear. Things are doing well.
We can hear it.
Okay, well,
I'm only joking. I'm only joking.
Don't do that to me right away. Holly, we haven't spoken in ages. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be back doing all things FPL. Had a little bit of time off, probably not long enough, but you can't stay out of the pre-season hype, can you? I mean, I'm a little bit confused as to why you've invited me on, because I think after you did your 8 simple rules last season, you then ended up beating me. So
yeah, but to be fair, I'd got a good score. At the end of the season, my overall rank did improve, and I know that yours did as well. So,
yeah,
you're kind of proof in the pudding, right? I don't know if you use the rules, but I did go through, because we recorded with you last year as well, before I joined the surgery, and you seem to be following your rules pretty good last time we went through them. Now, they're obviously changed now and updated, so it'll be good to see if you're still thinking the same things. But did you feel like you changed as a manager over the course of last season?
No, I think I kind of just played the game as I normally would do. And it was a weird one, really, because I started the season so poorly, and then I just kept backing my decisions, and I had like a really good few game weeks that proper boosted me up the rankings. Probably didn't play the chips as well as I could have done in hindsight, but, you know, it was the COVID season, so things were never going to be perfect all the time. But, I think I'm pretty standard in how I play the game from season to season. I don't do anything too crazy.
Yeah, well, before I ask you what kind of manager you are, I just wanted to point out that you did mention the COVID thing, and we do have a co-host here who has already put an asterisk beside last season. Rich, how are you feeling?
What do you mean I ruined 8 simple rules? Is that what you're... It feels like you were one of the main beneficiaries of the whole thing, Dave, where you went from wherever you were last season. And I know at one point, the season before, you were at 1 million, but I think you ended up finishing quite well.
Yeah.
Then last season, you ended up finishing almost in the top 10K.
Yeah. I mean, it's working. I feel like it's just... For me, having only played 3 seasons properly, like seriously, and being in the top 10K just once, it was weird to kind of luck my way into it year one, and then like the only way was down from that, and I did really poorly, which is why I wrote the rules. So that's why we're here. And to be honest, like I was always backing myself to do better than top 200K, but it was really good to have rules and stop myself from doing things that I otherwise would have had I not had this kind of 8 simple rules thing to start. But yeah, let's go on to Holly. What kind of manager you are? So like, are you maverick? Are you conservative? Do you love a wee Captain Buendia every now and again? What are you doing?
Well, I feel like at the start of the season, I see the whole FPL game as like a big jigsaw, and I'm trying to find those bargains and trying to get the balance right in my game week 1 squad. And then I tend to, put a lot of effort into looking at the stats to try and help that to inform my decisions going forward. If I've got players that are performing well, I'll keep them in my team. If there's ones that are underperforming, I'll look to see whether the stats show that they could potentially, come good soon, or look to whoever is in their price bracket that seems to be doing quite well and sort of take things from there. So I don't tend to go with any crazy decisions, but we get all this talk, don't we, about the template and the obvious moves to make each week, but you can find that you can play the game fairly boring, really, in terms of doing similar transfers to what other people are discussing and still find yourself moving up the rankings. So yeah, I try not to panic. and just try and make the obvious move if I can.
I feel like Rich is learning already. Try not
yeah,
to
so
panic.
something I noticed about your team last year, Holly, was you were so loyal to Bruno. Like, I remember every time you posted or podcasted about your team, you had Bruno. You seemed to captain him a lot. I haven't actually done research looking back at your team, but that's just the impression I got from last season.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a love affair with Bruno, and I backed myself at the start of the season. I said, Bruno's going to score 300 points this season, and he was on track until about February, and then things went a bit wayward in the end. But I think it was Bruno and Salah were in my team for the whole season, and I think Salah was like the third highest point scorer. Bruno was top, and I feel like I could make that same prediction. If anyone's going to score 300 points again this season, it's going to be one of those two. And again, I'm hoping to keep those two in my team all the way through the season again.
I would absolutely love it if there wasn't those two weren't at the top, because I really do like a mayhem season. I feel like I thrive on everyone else freaking out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It felt like Bruno wasn't going to be template last season, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks, and then he started scoring heavily and his ownership rocketed.
Yeah, it was mad. He was at a funny place last season because I think he started at 10.5, so he was like below the big premium midfielders but above everyone else, and he was really difficult to fit in your team from the start and get the other premiums in alongside him. But I feel like this year we haven't really got that many premiums to choose from, and everyone's kind of going Salah, Fernandez, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We could do with someone like the next Salah or the next Bruno taking hold and then it forcing our hands a little bit and trying to fit in a big third premium big hitter, because at the moment we seem to have, when we're doing our drafts, we seem to have a lot of choice and, not seem to be struggling for funds at all.
Yeah, my money's on Werner. For sure. No, I'm not. I'm just kidding. Right. That is a great segue into our first rule, guys. So template team to start this season. So we're looking to play safe. We're looking to get all the highly owned players, and we're looking to just coast our way through the first couple of game weeks and then attack the informed players or the best players with the best fixtures, as opposed to not starting safe and then maybe having to rectify some poor decision making. So Holly, what do you think about that rule, just to kick us off?
Well, if I'm honest, Dave, it's not the most fun rule that I've ever heard, but rules rarely are fun. But I do think that, it is the way to go. But I don't tend to set up my team for game week 1 by instantly looking at who's the most highly owned players. I often do that when I'm looking to, the subs, like my sub defenders and things like that. And
I gotcha. The 4.5s.
Yeah, the 4.5s. But when it comes to selecting my first 11, I don't necessarily look towards the template when I'm making those decisions. But it's certainly something that you've got to bear in mind. But I think if you feel strongly against a couple of players, then it's fine. But you need a lot of luck if you go against the template, because if it doesn't pay off, then you'll find yourself way off the chasing pack to start with. I tend to. It's one of those things though that it's like the template's there because there's decent players at decent price points that have got that consistency that you want them in your team from the start of the season. But every year you see like a certain player hyped. I think last year obviously Werner was the one, and they tend to flop year after year. We see this must-have player. Everyone's writing Twitter threads on, you must have this player because X, Y, and Z. And you end up having that fear and that FOMO, don't you, of, well, I've got to have them in my team because everyone else is going to have them, and everyone's saying how well they're going to perform at the start of the season. And sometimes you do need to trust your gut, but if you go for too many ballsy picks and they don't come off, then you're going to find yourself in hot water. So what I would do is just try not to back against the template too many times. It's about having that balance of, a core that are going to stand you in good stead, and then a few differentials or, a couple of enablers that are allowing you to afford the key players that you want in your game week 1 squad.
Right. I'm trying to think of how many. Is there a number that you've got in your head? Like, I'm gonna have differentials that are nothing to do with a template, and I'm gonna back my gut or back my intuition or whatever you want to call it. But have you got a number in mind of how many versus how many?
Probably 8 and 3 in your first 11.
Yeah, 8 and 3 is a hard rule. Okay, I like
Well,
that.
not a hard rule, but
No, 8 and 3. You've said it. We're
I'm
recording.
trying to make you commit there. Yeah.
you and your rules.
Oh, amazing. I don't know what's going on with Rich's camera, but it's made him look like 3 times cooler.
Yeah,
so
what is going on
I'm
there?
just going to leave it. I don't know, but you've turned into Rorschach from
Like you're in your own little
Watchmen.
nightclub over there.
What's happening here?
Hold on, I'm going to zoom
I
in.
think it's the heat. Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh, why would it stop?
When internet goes good. Right, I'm good. I'm done.
I do apologise for this. I'm not trying to steal the limelight, Holly. This.
No. I think
believe it.
we're all going to be looking at you, so you might as well continue the conversation.
Yeah. So how does this work? So that rule's done, and then we move on to the next one.
Oh, unless you have anything to add, Mr. Dance Floor.
No, let's move on to the second one while I still look like this.
Hold on, I'll zoom into me, and then you can turn your camera off and on and see if that fixes that. All right.
Okay.
So that you guys don't see any of the Skype stuff.
Okay. Hold on a second.
God, I winked and everything. Hurry up.
So rule number 2 is use price points to balance the team. So I guess we touched on it a little bit before, where you mentioned you'll probably go for Salah or Bruno. Not trying to back you into a corner, but that's what you sounded like you were doing.
Definitely both.
But I mean, do you use price points then? I mean, for example, I guess Harry Kane, would you go for a premium striker, or do you have a set way you do it?
I always tend to structure my game week 1 squad in the same way. So I'll start by looking in the premiums. Often too many premiums. I've been known in the past to try and fit like 4 big hitters in there, and it always collapses, and suddenly you've got no funds to move around, and you're activating that early wildcard. But I tend to look in my premiums. This season I'm going with 2. 3 tends to be the sweet spot from just from experience, but this season there's only really 2 premium attackers that are appealing to me. Then I get my 4.5 set and forget goalkeeper locked in. I get a couple of premium defenders in there, a couple of mid-priced midfielders, and then just whatever money I've got left in the pot goes on the rest of the squad effectively. I've seen this price points bandied about quite a bit, and it was quite hot before the start of last season. Mm-hmm. I don't actually think it's that important, if I'm honest, the whole price points thing. I guess you've got the argument, say this season, that a lot of the template teams, so to put it, are going with big hitting premium midfielders and then going with 3 mid-price strikers. And then say if Harry Kane starts the season really well for Spurs or Man City or wherever he might be, you're suddenly thinking, well, how am I going to get him in? Because you're going to have to maybe downgrade 2 or 3 midfielders or a midfielder and a defender to shift those funds about to get him in. And it's something that you're not going to easily be able to do without a wild card, especially because, we're inevitably going to make some mistakes on our game week 1 drafts. There's going to be injuries and stuff like that. And suddenly you're needing to make 5 or 6 moves to actually get to where you want to be. But I know the price point argument is all about flexibility, but it can, sort of strangle and stifle what you're trying to put together for game week 1 if you're too worried about, oh, well, how am I going to get to a premium striker? Have I got, enough mid-price midfielders or whatever? So I tend not to worry too much. I feel like in my head I can strike that balance without having to worry too much about the price points.
Does it maybe apply more then to how many budget players you have more than how many premium players you have? As in, you wouldn't have like 4 or 5 budget midfielders? Yeah,
I guess so, but that's not really something that you see a lot of.
No,
really.
But it is a good point, because it sounds like you've got like 1 expensive defender, 2 expensive midfielders, a bunch of, mid-priced strikers, and then you kind of sprinkle a couple of 5s and 4.5 millions, maybe a 6 million midfielder around about your team. And that, to be honest, is quite similar to the price point team balance. The only difference is that you would, if you felt like transferring in a player that was similarly priced to one of your players, then that would be the player that would need to go. And it is simply so that when the scenario comes up, like you suggested, where Kane is really expensive and you can't get him, it means that you actually have someone close to that price that you've already targeted for such a transfer. So I think the benefits are, it's more of a case for me that when you have the team set up like that, any mistake that you've made or any player that you've missed out on is easily accessible. So it's almost like you're starting with your template, but you're also making sure that your price points are correct, so that if that template was wrong, like, you're absolutely golden because you can reach everyone. Have you ever been in a situation at the start of the season where you've gone without a Kane and then struggled to get him and then got him in too late?
I think most seasons have always started with a premium forward. So I feel like this year could be the year where things like go to pot really quickly.
This is the first time you're going against this kind of idea.
Yeah. I feel like
I like that.
Probably about four seasons out of 6 I've started with Kane. I think the first season I was playing, I had Diego Costa. I think last season maybe I know I didn't have Kane to start with. I think I'd gone big in midfield. So I think Werner was the price point that I had. He was like my most expensive player, but I think he was under 10 if I remember rightly.
It was 9.5.
Yeah, 9.5. So it was like, it wasn't easy to get Kane in from there either.
No, but it would have been easier than Tony or whoever we've got.
Yeah, exactly. But you've got to take a few risks, haven't you? I don't want to, compromise the whole balance of my squad in terms of how I like it for game week 1 just because, I might want Kane. And the thing is, it's good to have these price points so you can jump between. But at the start of the season, when everyone's priced in those like 500,000 brackets and then someone goes up or down 0.1, suddenly you could find yourself priced out anyway.
Yeah. That's good food for thought. This doesn't really work if you're not vigilant with the price changes. That's a really good caveat as well. Rule number 3, simple captain choices. Now, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves, that we are all in the same boat here and that we don't really go for ridiculously maverick captain choices unless we absolutely have to. Holly, what are you saying to that then?
Yeah, certainly for the first phase of the season, I wouldn't be going with any maverick captain choices. I think it's okay to not go with, the player that's going to be the most captained for the game week if you feel differently. Right. I think something that worked quite well for me last season was going with Bruno Fernandes over the most obvious captain pick. Some weeks that gave me a decent jump in rank, but it's so easy to get wrong. I always find captaincy so difficult. You get on a run and you feel like you're invincible and then it all comes crashing down again. But you can't be too disappointed if you've gone, with a popular captain pick and the blanked because, everyone's in the same boat and you're not getting too far behind. So I did enjoy playing a bit of the Euros fantasy over the summer, and being able to change a captain each day was great, and having 4 or 5 bites of the cherry. So to go back to just one, it's
I really hope they don't bring
painful.
that in. That would be rubbish. That'd be the worst. Do any of you guys do maverick stuff, like, unless you're like top million or something?
Sometimes I get a bit cocky. Like if I've had a good few game weeks, I feel like I'm invincible, and any FPL decision I make is obviously going to work because the last 3 decisions I've made have come off. Yeah. And especially when it's like a double game week, I don't mind taking a bit of a punt. Like last season, I went a bit off-piste with my triple captain and went for Bamford there was a double game week where it was just Leeds that had the double. I feel like I'm more likely to go maverick with the triple captain because I don't really have much luck with it. But it paid off all right last season. So
did it? As your direct competitor last season, it went very well for me, I thought. What did you get, an assist?
I think he got like 10 points in the end. It was like 9 or 10 points.
Did he really? Oh,
Yeah,
well.
it's better than like 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Put it that
Okay.
way.
Fair play. It would have
So
been bad if he blanked.
I'm more likely to do something a bit maverick like that when it's a double game week, but
Gotcha.
generally week to week, unless it's like the last few weeks of the season and I'm really chasing a target, I'll, keep it simple. Go with a premium player with a good
Yeah.
fixture.
Would you ever
It's
captain
interesting that
Trent?
you.
Sorry, Rich, you go.
It's just interesting that you say if you go on a bit of a roll, you get overconfident, but you sort of by that point, I assume you've hit a few captains in a row, so you sort of built up that room for error. So if it does go wrong, you probably already gained on people over the last few weeks. So it's almost like, I don't know, it was almost like gambling if you're doubling up every hand and.
Yeah, I remember a couple of seasons ago, I think it was when it was Dave's first season, there was a lot of managers that managed to hit like 10, 15 captaincies in a row at the start of the season.
Oh yeah, it was like the highest poll on Scout. I think the highest person on Scout to be voted for captaincy, and that was like the best captain for 18 game weeks in a row or something mental.
Wow.
I do remember that season actually. I think it was 15,
season.
16, something like that.
It was.
But it's not always like that, as last season showed.
It was definitely my first season, but then when I went on to the next season, I was like, I'll just keep doing that. I'll just pick the one that everyone else picks, and then like 2 game weeks in, that didn't work out. Like Salah was the only 1 game week one, and then everything else kind of crumbled. But yeah, so I think we're all in the same page with the simple captain choices. There's not going to be very many managers who are like, no, you have to do it different every week, because it's not sustainable. It's very difficult to do it unless you're the type of manager who has intricate knowledge of one team, like you're a super West Ham fan or something, and you just feel it in your bones that Antonio's going to score 2 goals, which I am not one of those people. So
I'm not a super West Ham fan, no. The fourth rule, it's quite simply it's no hits. So Holly, what are your thoughts on hits?
I tend to take less than 10 hits in a season, and I'm not afraid of doing a -4, but it takes a lot for me to do a -8. But then if it comes to like a double game week and I feel really strongly about something and I'm getting players not just for the game week in front of me, but for a longer term, then I'm happy to go with a -12. So, but that really paid off for me last season. It was heading towards the City double game weeks. City had been keeping a few clean sheets. I didn't have any City defenders, and I brought in 2 City defenders, both for a hit. I was already on a -4, brought in 2 City defenders for a -12, and that got literally repaid in 1 game of a double game week.
Was one John Stones by any chance?
No.
Oh.
Unfortunately not. This is where Dave got a run on me in our mini league last season.
I didn't realise that. I wasn't asked that.
I'd got Cancelo and Diaz instead. I generally don't take a lot of hits, and I try and roll the transfer where possible so that I can, do that mini wildcard with a -4 to completely refresh my team. So it would be rare for me to take a -8 or more outside of a double game week, and I probably wouldn't take more than, a couple of -4s a month.
Yeah, this rule is more, it's not saying never take a hit, because obviously we have to take into considerations the crazy weeks, the double game weeks, the injuries. But it's more of like a mantra of don't take hits just because you really want a player and you can't get to him because you had a fire elsewhere and you needed to transfer that guy out. Like it's more of a stop, you know what you're doing, just stop it. Just stop it.
And there's some points in a season where things are more predictable. So like during those early phases of the season from like September, when you've got a bit of data, through to the start of December, you kind of know how things are going to play out. But then you get to December and you've got all the fixtures and there's so much chaos going on that it gets to the point where there's not much point taking a hit, because there might be this shiny player that's, going to be brilliant on paper for the next few games, but it rarely plays out that way when you get to a congested point in the season.
Yeah.
So I tend to be more conservative, like over the festive period, and just try and grind it out. But other points in the season where things are a bit calmer, then I'm more happy to take the points hit.
That's a good point. I never thought of it like that. To slice it up and slice the season up into difficult periods means take less risk. Yeah, I like it. All right, good point.
Yeah, nice.
Minimal core team transfers is our number 5. Basically, what that means is stick with your core team of expensive players. Don't you know that? Do you remember that? Like, we're gonna take Kane out for 2 game weeks, bring him in for 2 game weeks, take him out, like all that stuff. This is a very simple. If you have Salah, leave Salah. If you have Vardy, leave Vardy. If you have Kane, leave him. Just keep your core team transfers to an absolute minimum. We were talking about it at the start of this. So is that something that you're gonna continue this season? Just keeping Salah and Bruno forever?
It's always something that I set out to do, and it's easier to follow through on with the most expensive players, providing that they don't pick up an injury.
Yeah, of course.
It's one of those that I did hold Salah through that really barren spell. I think he'd blanked like 6 or 8 games in a row, something ridiculous like that, and I kept him through that. But there's certain players in FPL that, you know, at the end of the season, providing that they've not, you know, picked up a big injury, they're going to be at the top of the, you know, total points table at the end of the season.
Yeah.
You know, your Liverpool defenders, Salah, Bruno Fernandes. So in theory, yes, you would hold them through. I always find that, you know, official FPL will put out a tweet towards the end of the season. How many of you players have you had since game week 1?
Mm-hmm.
And you always think, oh, I've had loads. And then you go in and then it's like, oh, not really at all. But, you know, by the time you've had a couple of wildcards in a season and you've picked up injuries as well, and then you've got double game weeks, blank game weeks, it is hard to retain a lot of those players through for the entire season. So it's something I set out to do. It's easy to do with the premium players, but it's easy to make other moves elsewhere. I think the good thing about making minimal transfers to the core of your team is that you retain that team value as well. So someone like Bamford, who we saw go up a lot in price last season, I did hop off him and back on him again. And, you know, if you'd retain that value through the season, it's probably a good way of playing the game.
Yeah. What's quite interesting with that question as well is goalkeepers, because obviously they're very core to your team. So, I mean, goalkeepers. Do you do many goalkeeper transfers like throughout the season outside, obviously, wildcards, free hits?
Not necessarily, but it's one of them that sometimes I'll end up with a keeper that, you know, suddenly has lost their place. Like I had McCarthy last season.
There was a lot last year.
Yeah, and it's also one that, last season it was weird. Like there wasn't many keepers that just played 38 games or so. And they tend to be the ones that you can lock in for the season. But it's also one of those where, you know, you're really happy with your squad and you've got 2 free transfers. Sometimes if it's like a case of, well, I could be burning a transfer, I might think, do I need to upgrade my keeper, change my keeper?
I think the burning of a transfer is the ultimate flex. I love doing that. It makes me feel good. It's like, I know you're not supposed to like it, but it makes me think like, my team is perfect. Like,
how many times have you intentionally done it though, Dave? And how many times have you like slept in and missed the deadline?
Oh yeah, all the time for that. That's drunk Dave gets a lot of burning done. But on purpose once, and I felt like an absolute baller. Immediately
I hated it. The first and only time I did it, I hated it. I don't know what it is. It just went against everything that I feel like FPL stands for.
Yeah, they give you a transfer, you better use it.
Yeah, and then it's like 3 weeks later, I needed like 4 transfers, and I was like, I burnt one.
I could have done with that now. Yeah, I mean, it's something I've never done. I almost did it once, and I think I just ended up changing like a 4.0 million defender just because I don't know, like you say, Holly, it feels wrong, and Dave just sounds like he's making excuses for his poor decisions. But the next rule is to plan your wildcard timing. So I assume that's, you know, if you go into the season knowing when you're going to wildcard.
Yeah. Now, I've played my wildcard at the first international break basically every season bar 2 of them. Last season, I kept it until the last possible point I could use it. And there was another season, which was my worst ever season, where I saved it for the second international break. I'll be honest, though, I'm a busy person, especially now I've got 2 kids, and I need time to play my wildcard. So I do like to play my wildcard in the international break so that I've got time to think about it. Or it wasn't too bad when it was over Christmas and there was enough people around to entertain the children. So yeah, there are times where you look at your team and think this needs a wild card, but if I can hang on to until an international break, so I've got more time to do the planning properly, then I will do that, which probably isn't the best piece of fantasy advice that you'll ever hear. But at the end of the day, this is a game that we've got to fit around our real lives, and sometimes real life is more important, and you need to just fit in the wild card when you can.
Honest advice is valuable as well. Because there was that, like you mentioned, that Christmas where people were literally wildcard on Christmas Day. So I know some people that didn't wildcard because they wouldn't have time.
Holly, didn't you do your wild card a little bit earlier than you wanted to because you were gonna be giving birth?
Yeah.
Like, that's hardcore, isn't it?
That was one. Yeah, it was last season, and everyone was like, "Oh well, I'm gonna wild card for game week 30 because there was like double game weeks and stuff going on, and there was an international break." And I was like, well, I've timed this baby to perfection. It's coming during the international break. I'm not going to be able to wild card and have a baby this international break. But there was another point a few weeks previous to that, which was also a good time to wild card. So it was a bit of a 50-50 anyway. Even if we put the baby out of the equation, I'd have been tempted to wildcard then anyway. But logistically, it wasn't going to happen in the international break, so it came early.
So you followed this rule to perfection. I feel like you were the one of the very few who absolutely planned the crap out of your wildcard. I said crap, James. That's for Iceman. He is keeping a muzzle on me.
I wonder what was happening there.
I'll say Iceman in future.
Well done for not swearing.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I have anything else. It's mostly just I wrote that because there was one year where I just went, you know what, I want to use my wildcard. I hate looking at my team, and it was the worst ever. But then
it was a boredom wildcard.
It was more of none of these players are like wetting my whistle. None of them. I just feel like I hate looking at them every week. I've been trying to change it. I'm not able to attack any players that I want. And I think it was ages ago. So it was like, Hazard looks really good, but I literally can't get him because I've got 6 or 7 other things that I have to deal with first. And I was like, I'm just gonna wildcard. And it came from no planning to being stressed because it was such a bad time to do it, not looking at anything. And now I know we've moved on quite a lot, and a lot of the community will never do that, and they will definitely be planning their wildcards. But it's mostly just a case of like, don't go into the season without knowing at least 2 or 3 times where you could be wildcarding, and set up a team so that you know what it would look like if you got to there. And if you don't have to, you don't have to. There's lots of different ways to play your wild card, but definitely plan it and don't go wild on your wild card.
Yeah, and last season was very, very different because we had those blank game weeks as well, game week 1. So this season should be a bit easier, hopefully. To plan when you're going to wildcard.
Hopefully. The next rule is one that we've changed slightly. So last season it was just no team bias, but I've added player to it as well. So no team and player bias. And what I mean by that is very simply, if you're a Tottenham fan, you don't get any Arsenal players, or you don't even get any Tottenham players if you're one of those fans. But this season, I'm also looking at players that you've decided that you're not getting because you've been burned with them in the past. Something comes to mind when Mark, FPL General, wasn't getting Ings because he'd been injured quite a lot the season previous. And then like Ings went on that amazing tear of like scoring every 2 games or something, and he lost out big time because of that rule of not bringing in players. So I've included it this time. Has there ever been a team that you've decided not to get, Holly, or a player that you've decided you're absolutely never buying ever again?
When I was a season ticket holder at Hull City, I tended to back against Hull by going with players in my team and even trusting them with the captaincy.
So you're that type of manager. I love it.
So I do have team and player biases, but probably not in the more conventional ways that you'll see on Twitter. I'm probably gonna blindly hold Bruno Fernandes all season because he's one of my favourite players.
Right.
Rather than be like, oh, I'm not going to own this player because X, Y, Z.
Well, you're a glory hunter, so.
Thanks. I don't mind. But then you've got last season, Jesse Lingard. He always pops up. He's good for 3 games and then he disappeared. But this last season just gone, he was good for more than 3 games. But it took me 5 games to believe that the pattern was going to continue for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th game. So you kind of do need to be a bit adaptable and not have those player biases. I feel like I'm not someone that does give into bias too much, but I do it in a bit of a weird way when I do get that bias.
Yeah, it sounds like you're more into the bias of players that you like. You're definitely going to transfer in this player as soon as his fixtures are good, or even at the very start of this season because he's been so good to you in the past.
Yeah, I don't have that hate factor that some people have.
I mean, to be fair, if a player has been really well in the past, there's every chance that they will continue being good. And it's easier to transfer a player out than, I guess, hate a player for 5 weeks and then be like, right, fine, I'll get him. And then all of a sudden the train stops and the points dry up. So yeah, what about teams? Is there a team specific that you don't get? Like, for example, even relegation teams. Are you against doing that? Are you against getting teams that are, I don't know, fighting for a place in the Premier League full time, if you know what I mean? Like, do you hate getting Crystal Palace players in? Is there anything niggling?
No, I don't think so.
Nah,
who are Hull's biggest rivals?
We don't really have any rivals because
you have to be good to be
no one close to us.
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably a good thing then, because some people have these biases because they just hate another team.
Yeah, don't have that. Don't have that at all.
Everyone kept bringing up that Everton supporter didn't buy Liverpool players. Last time I did this.
Because he won.
Yeah, he won. He won, and he didn't buy any Liverpool players. But this was like pre-Salah. So it absolutely would not have worked. And to be fair, last season I didn't buy any. I actually don't think I bought a single Crystal Palace player. So there you go. So if I had won, I could have made that the tagline. I didn't buy any Crystal Palace players, and then I could have started a big war. And then people would be talking about me for the next 7 years about how he just doesn't buy Crystal. I don't really like.
Yeah, but you're not going to win FPL, Dave.
I might. These rules are really good, Holly.
There's that, and also someone avoiding Crystal Palace players is not like, oh my god, I can't believe what a maverick.
Where did
someone with this list of rules is not going to win FPL. I'm sorry.
That's true. I definitely agree.
I'm never going to win FPL. I don't play the right way to win.
You know, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll do like an 8 simple rules to win FPL, and we'll go through and we'll rewrite the rules for that 1 or 2, maybe even 3 viewers who really just are going to go all out to win, and just for those guys, and we'll make a little list. I think that's a good idea.
You just need to interview Magnus Carlsen, Dave.
Well, he plays to win for sure. I'm so upset for him, by the way. He came 10th one season, and it was because he went differential on every single player that he had for his free hit in the final game week, and he went from 2nd place or something to
he captained Salah when Salah was benched, and we knew Salah was benched.
Yeah, well, everyone in the community
playing chess, so he prioritised chess over FPL.
He deserves it.
But if you want to come on, Magnus, that's cool.
Yes, please do. We're gonna be doing something with your teams actually. Stay tuned for that. Right.
Yeah. And the final rule is, again, Dave writes for these rules and wants the guest to come up with a rule.
It's lazy,
he's quite brutal when you say your rules, but what do you have one, Holly?
Yeah, I do, and it's kind of linked to the, your number 1 and number 2 about your template team and the balance of your team for game week 1. And the thing that I really believe in is that you shouldn't go for too many players that are a gamble in game week 1. Now, you're not going to avoid any risky players in game week 1 because you need something in there. You need some substance in there. But there's a few categories that you need to be mindful of. So players that are new to the Premier League very rarely hit the ground running. We see it season after season.
Yeah.
Players that are new to the Premier League because they're from the promoted teams. Sometimes a promoted team comes up and they do really well, but most of the time they struggle. You might see them do well in the first couple of weeks and then tail off. Exactly.
Sorry.
having players who, you know, are returning from an injury. They've been injured over the summer. They were injured at the end of last season. Like, you do not know if they're going to be returning right at the very best after an injury layoff. And it might take them longer to settle into the season. Backing players from clubs that have got new managers. We don't know what their tactics are going to be. You don't know if that player is going to be nailed in that 11. You don't really know how things are going to pan out. Are you going to get a new manager bounce or are they going to struggle?
Yeah.
And now all those things in isolation, you're never going to avoid players that are falling into those categories. But if you look at your draft for game week 1 and you've got 8 players that could fall into one of those categories, if, you know, 50% of those flop, you're going to get to that first international break and be like, oh no, I need to play my wild card. Whereas if you've got 2 or 3 players that fall into one of those categories and they all flop, you've got 2 or 3 free transfers by that point to fix it. So just look through and think at every player. Are they reliable? Are they consistent? Is there going to be something stupid that I could forecast could happen that happens, that then by the international break I'm thinking I made a mistake here? Because it doesn't matter if you've got a few, but if you've got a team full, then you're screwed.
So what I've done is I've written really safe rules for everyone to follow, and your rule is no, you're not being safe enough. Like, no transferred players that haven't played in the Premier League, no players that come up, no players that haven't shown that they're good, and if they've been injured, definitely not. Like, I like that. That's a great rule, is be even safer. So that's a decent rule. Much better than Rich's. Like,
I mean, it's hard to come up with like a risky rule, isn't it? Because I guess you can't say as a rule always bring in injured players or so they're good rules, Dave. I think they're sensible, but they're good. Like,
yeah, I mean, I could think of a risky rule. I guess never captain someone over 10 million.
I think that would be difficult.
Well, a risky rule will define good. I mean, this will take ages. We can go into that for a long time.
So you wanted me to come up with a rule that was unattainable?
No, I just so you guys call me lazy when I said this rule, which is I get you were joking, but it hurt me deeply. What I think the reason why I added the guest rule was because these are things that I've been thinking of a lot, but there's obviously a lot to gain. I'm not saying that I know everything, and it's really good to have someone to come in and for example, if all the managers that I brought in said, and also don't get anyone who's new to the Premier League, then, you know, 8 out of 8 managers think that that's going to be a rule for next season. Do you know what I mean? So it's good to ask. And I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Holly, for coming on. Did you enjoy yourself?
Thank you,
yeah, it was good fun. I've enjoyed it.
I really like these. I feel like I learn every single time. And even if I don't, it's such a good refresher of like to get your mind right for the season. Like, don't be an idiot, David. Just don't. You know you want to, but just don't. And no drinking on a Friday. That's a good rule as well. There you go. Rich, what about you?
I'll be drinking on a Friday.
Right,
but no, that was that was really, really good. That was really, really good.
Perfect. All right. So, Holly, do you want to plug anything before we go?
No, I don't think so.
Or play the piano?
I was about to say that. Yes. Please play us something.
No, definitely not.
Right, okay. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And there's probably a Patreon link or something down if you want even more of us. And Rich, any last words?
Up the pod.
See you next week.